Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many of my honourable colleagues may be surprised to learn that Grande Prairie has had a difficult struggle with fentanyl and other deadly opioids. But I'm very proud of the way our first responders, RCMP detachment, medical personnel, and social agencies have dealt with this devastating epidemic. In fact, our community's attempts have been so successful that Grande Prairie has seen a reduction in the number of fatalities in the past year. Fort McMurray's efforts to tackle the crisis have also proved positive. As proof, let me review the numbers of deaths in our major northern cities over the past 2 years. In 2015, Grande Prairie lost 18 of our citizens to fentanyl-related overdoses. The drug also killed 17 people in Fort McMurray. But in 2016, each city saw the number of fatalities drop to 9. That's a 50% reduction in Grande Prairie and slightly more of that in Fort McMurray. The reason we're seeing this change for the better is due to the concerted effort of many local agencies in northern Alberta. For instance, health units have made special attempts to generate awareness of the dangers of fentanyl and other deadly synthetic opioids. The RCMP and the Alberta law enforcement team, known as ALERT, also waged aggressive anti-drug campaigns. In Fort McMurray, ALERT managed to wipe out an entire drug operation, which took thousands of pills off the streets. And Grande Prairie Mounties established a special police unit to combat the drugs in our area. HIV North also mobilized to distribute naloxone kits to smaller rural communities in northern Alberta. And I have to credit the provincial government for announcing plans to open an opioid dependency treatment clinic in Grande Prairie this spring. All of these initiatives have helped the North to at least gain some control over a terrible crisis that has been tearing apart our communities. Grande Prairie, which saw its crime rate spike in recent years, has even seen a decrease in criminal activity. The positive turnaround in the North shows us what can happen if this kind of coordinated approach were to occur on a provincial scale. Of course, it'll take the Government of Alberta to implement a framework, and I hope that happens. For the provincial coordination does not take place, fentanyl will continue to take a toll throughout our province, and it could even regain its foothold in the North. While I've been pointing to some progress up north, fentanyl and other deadly synthetic opioids are devastating small communities. Red Deer, for instance, has lost 39 citizens to fentanyl-related deaths in the past 2 years. And we know that a number of First Nations reserves faced severe crises over the past few years, to the point of declaring their own states of emergency in order to stem the carnage. Like all other communities, the leaders of the reserve had to create a framework from scratch when they were forced to take action due to their desperate circumstances. Fentanyl is also prevalent in small-town Alberta, where crime has climbed alarmingly. Taber is an example of a small rural town that has been dealing with a steep increase in drugs and other crime. It is especially hard for communities like Taber, which is only a short distance from Calgary, because its residents fall prey to criminals bent on stealing their vehicles and ATVs to make money for their next fix, or drug dealers seeking new customers. As the Taber Chief of Police noted, break-and-enters and property crimes fuel the drug trade. As we have seen an increase in fentanyl and crystal meth usage in southern Alberta, we can draw a nexus to Calgary. Like so many communities, the Taber Police Service took matters into their own hands by launching a public awareness campaign on fentanyl that went viral in its community. Taber also found its own school resource officer who teaches students about the dangers of drugs. I've outlined a few of the occurrences around rural Alberta, and in an effort to demonstrate that efforts communities and regions are making to combat this crisis, and to underline that this crisis is occurring throughout Alberta, not just in our large cities. But if mid-sized and small communities can implement measures and programs that make a difference locally, can you imagine how powerful a provincial response would be? Mr. Speaker, I urge our government to call a public health emergency and start taking the step today for all Albertans. If they do not take this step, they are doing all Albertans a disservice, because everyone is suffering in some way from this crisis.